In this video, I'm going to talk about sessions 8 and 9 for The Lost City, which I am currently running for my game group. Now, as a quick reminder, I am running The Lost City. This is module B4, the original printing of it, for my game group in an open table style game where players can show up when they want to and not show up when they have a conflict. And we are running it in 5th edition, which is different than the original printing, so I'm kind of transposing things as we go. Session 8 and 9 were very fun, very, very exciting. So Session 8 started, we had 3 players there, so 3 characters were going out. And previously in Session 6 and 7, the characters had really cleared a lot of the 4th tier of the pyramid. And so in Session 8, they wanted to kind of finish that job. While the pyramid is a living organism, it's a living pyramid. It's not literally an organism, but it is a living pyramid. There's actual things going on behind the scenes. Clearing rooms makes the pyramid a little bit less dangerous in general, and so the players really wanted to go through and figure out how to do all that and really clear some of those original monsters out. So the very first place that these characters go to is there's a room on the 4th tier of the pyramid with white apes in it. And these are giant white apes. And the 5th edition stats for giant white apes are insane. This was way too challenging for the group. I knew that, but this is an old school module, and I actively try and avoid balancing encounters. I just want things to play out because I think it leads to more dynamic gameplay. But I did give them some hints. I said that these were very large apes. They could barely fit in the room. As the players entered, the apes used their fists to pound into the ground, broke some of the stones of the ground beneath them, and then pulled up these big boulders. And then the characters were like, well, this is going to be a tough fight. I guess I'm going to attack. And to put it shortly, it did not go well. They barely escaped with their life. One of the players had their character cast some sort of illusion where it made multiple copies of themselves, and each copy got a boulder through the head, which obviously, killed that little illusion, but also had any of those hit the real player, the player would have been dead outright. The character would have been dead outright, and so they were barely able to get out with their lives. Now, something interesting happened after they escaped, because one of the things I do frequently is roll for random encounters, and I do this anytime there is a long passage of time in the pyramid. I do it anytime the players take a short or long rest. Usually it's short rests during the session, but also anytime there's loud noises. And in this case, fighting these white apes who are breaking the ground created some loud noises. And so the characters ended up encountering some hobgoblins who were Zargon followers and who are looking for victims of Zargon. Now, in the Lost City, near the back, there are some really great, they are called Synedition encounters, and they are incredible for this module here. And they are basically combat encounters, but most of them don't end in combat, and all of them give extra motivations for these Syneditions. And I use that as a little bit of inspiration when I was creating my own random encounter maps, as well as some of the ideas from the actual encounter maps from the module. So if you look at the encounter maps here on the module, one of them is a Thule, which is like a troll hobgoblin mix, which is kind of weird, but that ends up being a priest of Zargon. So I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if there was hobgoblins that were priests of Zargon who are looking for victims for Zargon, and they just kind of wander around the pyramid grabbing people as they find them. And that's the encounter that the players had. Now the problem was the players all were at single digits health. They were in all bad shape, and one of them actually only had 1 health left, having just recently been revived. And so as they were going to a room for a short rest, as they turned the corner, they saw the hobgoblins, and now all of a sudden they were stuck between a rock and a hard place. The hobgoblins came after them, and behind them they could still hear the noise of the angry white apes. And one of the characters stepped up, fought the hobgoblins, basically to allow the other 2 to retreat, and ended up getting knocked unconscious and taken. And so the hobgoblins began to work their way down through the pyramid. So the other 2 characters had a decision to make. They could either take a short rest or they could follow. And they followed the goblins down through tier 5. They followed the goblins through new rooms through tier 5 to the place where the stairs lead down to tier 6. In that room, they talked to some were-rats, which gave them some helpful information, and then they followed the stairs down to tier 6 where they saw a pit scorpion, a giant pit scorpion there on tier 6 of the pyramid, and decided that they were in such bad shape they were not going to try and fight this giant pit scorpion, and instead they were going to head back up to home base and tell everybody else that their friend got taken and they need to bring basically as many people down as possible to try and get their friend back. And that's how session 8 ended. Very, very cool. I was very excited. A lot of dynamic gameplay. And now there was a clear motivation for the group besides exploration that has evolved through the sessions so far. Because we wanted to try, we as in the entire game group, wanted to get a big group of players together to try and go save this character. And we actually had to take basically a 2-month hiatus. We were unable to meet for 2 months, but finally last week we were able to meet again and play session 9. And this was basically, the whole goal was to try and get down into the pyramid as far as they could to save this character that had been taken. We had 6 players, so 6 characters were there in this session. And one of the things that the characters did, one of them was pretty high ranking within the Brotherhood of Gorm. At this point, they had risen up 2 ranks. They had a title, and they were pretty much getting whatever they asked or whatever they wanted from the Brotherhood of the Gorm at this point. And so they went up and they said, hey, we're going to go down and save our buddy that got captured by the priests of Zargon. Does anybody want to help? And I decided to make this just a D4 plus charisma roll because I thought that was relatively fair and would give some good utility and firepower for the group. And they rolled maximum, so they got 7 total followers. So we had a group of 13 total characters, 6 of them PCs, 7 of them NPCs, going down into the pyramid to start battling and trying to rescue their friend. This session was a lot of fun. It was very, very combat focused, as the rooms in tier 6 through 9 or 10, basically, there's not a lot of description. It's just a lot of monsters, a lot of big bad monsters, and so but I'll tell you a little bit about how I dealt with that. So the group got down to tier 5 and had more conversations with the were-rats. And I think this is really important. I want to pause here and say that if you are planning on running the Lost City down below tier 5 of the pyramid, I think the were-rats are really, really important. It's really important to show that they are not necessarily just there for combat, but that they can offer really, really strong insight both to tier 5, but also these spaces below tier 5. And that's exactly what happened here. The were-rats were trying to offer advice and information in exchange for money, and they were able to negotiate with the characters on what information they wanted for what price. And so they told the characters basically that when you go down into tier 6 of the pyramid, you're going to find a ladder. And that ladder brings you down to tier 7 and to tier 8. So it sends you straight down to tier 8. And so if you find that ladder, you're going to get closer to your friend that was taken. And they also knew what friend was being talked about and that they were probably lunch meat for Zargon at this point. But hey, they were going to offer them good luck and say, if you need any other information, please let us know. The were-rats also let them know because the characters asked, they said, what are you doing with all this money? And the were-rats said, well, we take it to the gambling room. And that was a nice little hint about another space in tier 5 and something I'm excited about. I hope the characters and players remember it because there's a lot of fun that can go on in the gambling room in the pyramid on tier 5. So the were-rats is very important if you're looking to run the Lost City because they can give really important information to the players about the rest of the pyramid, especially tier 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, because those are so combat focused. You want to give the players other means of getting around, other means of getting through the rooms rather than just combat, and information about that ladder. Help them do that. So then the characters continue down to tier 6. They fight a scorpion and wood golems in combat. They end up winning. The members of the Brotherhood of Gorm end up being really great fighters, and so they are just mowing down the enemies at this point. They do find the ladder in tier 6. They follow it down into tier 7. They see some sleeping hellhounds, which they go on by. At this point, it was getting kind of late in the evening, and I wanted them to get to tier 8, so I decided that the hellhounds were going to be sleeping. When they got down to tier 8, they followed a wrong path at first because now following the path of their friend was getting faint. And they come to a room with a specter. And something pretty funny happened. They were kind of doing a good job of using these NPCs, these Brotherhood of Gorm members, as strategic meat shields. I mean, they weren't like putting them directly in harm's way, but they were putting them first and trying to have them surround the enemy to give them some attacks of opportunity, or I guess advantage on attacks rolls and things like that. But in this room, the Spectre crits on the Brotherhood of Gorm and basically kills him outright, right in the doorway, right in front of everybody. And so one of the characters ends up kicking that now dead Brotherhood of Gorm member into the room, slamming the door in the Spectre's face, and the entire group of now 12 people take off running through the pyramid. They do eventually find the path of their buddy that had been taken, and they follow it to the room with a djinn, or a genie. And this was an incredibly crazy encounter because the genie, I tried to make it clear as a dungeon master that this did not have to be a combat encounter, right? I talked about how the genie was large. It seemed to be coming from vapors and steam and smoke that was from these embers in a brazier on the ground. And when one of the characters kind of ordered the members of Gorm into the room to surround the djinn didn't do anything. Just kind of like held its sword and looked at everyone. I think I maybe made a mistake here as a dungeon master. I probably should have had the djinn speak a little bit because I should have done just a little bit more to let them know this doesn't have to be a combat encounter. Instead, I just had the djinn stare menacingly, and I think that maybe put the players on a one-track mind for combat. Because again, it didn't need to be a combat situation. But otherwise, I was trying not to have the djinn be aggressive. I was trying to really show that, hey, the djinn is just waiting for you to do something, but all the characters did, all that they did was move to attack. And then they attacked. One of the characters had a really strong roll for a command, and made the djinn drop their sword. The djinn dropped their sword. And then one of the other characters, the djinn got to go. The djinn created this whirlwind that basically every single person in the room failed except for one. And it pushed everybody up against the walls. They were restrained against the walls. And now all of a sudden I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, oh great, this might be a TPK because nobody can pass this saving throw. It was insane. The one character that did pass the saving throw decided that they were going to try and knock over the embers and put them out that the djinn was from. And so they run directly at the embers, granting an attack of opportunity from the djinn. And the djinn almost kills outright this character with 3 fist attacks since they didn't have their scimitar. Excuse me. And so it was, again, very, very close to a TPK. One of the other characters was able to make a breath weapon attack on the djinn. They hit. The djinn failed their saving throw, so the whirlwind that was happening in the room ended up stopping, allowing everybody to move, and eventually they were able to knock over these coals into the sand, and the djinn failed the saving throw, and then I said it was sucked back into the brazier, the little bowl that the coals were burning in, and the encounter was over, and it was late at this point, and then the session ended, and we'll pick up from there the next time we play. So, very exciting session for me and the players, hopefully. What did I learn from it, and what do I think might help you if you're trying to run the Lost City in the future? Well, number one, like I said, the were-rats are very important to give information, and I think utilizing them that way as the Dungeon Master can give you a lot of utility, especially if the players are not getting it or not finding something, something like that. The other thing that I think is really important that I did a good job of here is in the tiers, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, again, there's not a lot of room description. There's big monsters, beefy monsters, but a lot of it on the surface looks very, very combat focused. And I think it's really important that you allow alternative victory conditions outside of killing a monster in combat. And I've been trying to do that with pretty much every single one of these monsters. The wood golems that the characters originally fought obviously have some sort of weakness to fire, and I basically made that an instant kill. If the players are smart enough to realize, oh, wood golems burn, they should just kind of burn up. In the case of this genie or this djinn, I made it clear that it was coming from these embers and coals, and the players latched on and said, hey, what happens if we knock those coals over? And they were right. I added in a saving throw for the djinn, and now one of them has a bowl that if they put embers in, they might summon this djinn. And what's going to happen? I don't know. We'll find out if the players end up doing it. But I think that's really important, is allowing for alternative means of victory or alternative means of getting around combat once you get down to tier 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, because again, on the surface, it's just a bunch of big bad monsters that look like they want to be killed, but it can really slow down gameplay if every single room you're going up against a really strong monster, and it makes the gameplay really one-dimensional from the first 5 tiers of the pyramid, which are really well designed and include a whole wide range of gameplay. So those are sessions 8 and 9. I was excited to share them with all of you. Thank you for listening. I'm not sure when sessions, the 10 and 11 recap will occur, because we haven't had session 10 yet, and given the way the summer has been, a lot of people have been busy. But hopefully we'll get to play soon. Hopefully I'll get the recap up soon after that, and then you can find out how things are going in the game and learn a little bit more about how to run the Lost City. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.